Hello. Recently, I made a video discussing the supposedly anti-terrorist government initiative, Prevent. It was started after the 7/7 bombings, which, for the benefit of those of you outside the UK, was a series of jihadi explosions on crowded underground trains and a bus during rush hour for maximum effect, of course. After that, Prevent was started as a programme charged with de-radicalising young people at risk of being turned into political or ideological extremists. Those who set it up were thinking mostly of Muslim extremists, but not too long after it started, things began to go wrong, and by 2024, Lord Shawcross, who was commissioned with studying it, said it was infused with what he came out with and said was a culture of cowardice. And that culture of cowardice has allowed abuses in our educational system, whereby ideologically captured idiots coming through our teachers' training indoctrination have started to label infants as dangerous radicals. There are a couple of really amusing examples, which I'll get to. Amusing. Not for the people involved, no doubt. Anyway, I'll get to that after I've told you. I'm Granniopteryx. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Any financial help you care to give me is appreciated. PayPal, Subscribestar, Buy Me a Coffee, and there's always YouTube super thanks. All the links are in the description. Right, I think I've covered just about everything. Let's get on with talking about Prevent and the painting of children as dangerous radicals. So, as I said, Prevent was primarily intended as a means of guiding Muslim teens out of the path of violent radicalisation. But instead, it drifted into concentrating on right-wing extremism, or what was deemed to be right-wing extremism, mostly because the people working in that area didn't want to be accused of Islamophobia. And to justify their concentration on this particular branch of what they saw as terror, or the potential for terrorism, Prevent came up with a pseudo-scientific theory which is supposed to chronicle the progression of right-wing extremism. And they did it in the same style as a medical textbook would chart the development of some sort of progressive disease. There are 3 stages, apparently: cultural nationalism, white nationalism, and white supremacism, each stage of which has boundaries that are imprecise enough to give those with an agenda plenty of scope for interpretation, as is actually confessed here. So you see, this is the document. Government response to the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament report extreme right-wing terrorism. Now let's find the bit I wanted to show you. Nevertheless, it says here, there is a risk that the varying terminologies used to categorise potential terrorists may cause confusion. You see, there shouldn't be any chance of them causing confusion, because this is a government initiative, and may cause confusion means they know that innocent or completely unrelated people are going to be caught up in this net, including, most worryingly, to risk conflation of ideology with intent. It is important to be clear that there is no suggestion that all those who subscribe to these ideologies have terrorist intent. This is simply a means to establish what might be motivating potential terrorists. So you see, They say there are dangers in the way they've set this up. But, people of goodwill aren't going to get sidetracked by this. And those 3 stages were described in the following way. Cultural nationalism, that's to do with anti-immigration and a fondness for Shakespeare and yes, minister, and which most people would consider perfectly normal mainstream opinions. White nationalism, which is supposed to be a desire to keep the English race ethnically pure, and white supremacism, which is supposed to be where white people believe that white people are not only superior but should be aggressive in maintaining that superiority, as is expressed here in this glossary of terms. But I want you to notice this here. Extreme right-wing terrorism, they say, describes those involved in extreme right-wing activity who use violence in furtherance of their ideology. So they're already saying that people who have any of these characteristics are going to be using violence. These ideologies can be broadly characterised as cultural nationalism, and I told you what they said cultural nationalism was, white nationalism, and white supremacism. And then it says individuals and groups may subscribe to ideological tenets and ideas from more than one category. So what it's saying here is that all of these categories here, from cultural nationalism, as I said, Shakespeare, to white supremacy, which is sort of the KKK, are all extreme right-wing views. It's just a small matter of degree as to how much they are extremist, but they're all extremist. Now, I can't pass this without pointing out that in Britain there was never any such organisation as the KKK. And you might check the Battle of Bambber Bridge for something about that type of subject. This is a Wikipedia article about it. You can probably find a lot more. I believe there was a film made. Anyway, it took place, the Battle of Bambber Bridge took place at the end of June in 1943. And it was a skirmish between, well, actually, it was a proper firefight between the white local residents of the village of Bambber Bridge in Lancashire versus the white American GIs who were stationed there. And it happened when the white GIs, the American soldiers, tried to enforce segregation. Because, you see, black American GIs were attending this pub here, Ye Old Hob Inn, and along with everyone else, locals and white GIs. And the white GIs wanted to stop the black GIs from being allowed into that local pub. And because of that, some local people took issue with the white soldiers and they were shooting at each other. That was at a time when people still had guns round here, you know. Anyway, that's the sort of record we in Britain have round here about extreme right-wing views. Anyway, as I said, Prevent invented these pseudo-scientific classifications, and they appear to be concentrating on these, the right-wing terrorism, rather than the original targets of the programme. And one of the points I made in the previous video was that in 2024, more than 1,300 people were referred to Prevent for extreme right-wing behaviour. And among those people were included 7 children under the age of 10. Think about that. A child under the age of 10 being labelled with something that would probably chase it for the rest of its life. And here we have something from the Open Rights group. Prevent. Thousands of children referred to counter-terrorism programme last year. Almost 4,000 children under the age of 18 were referred to the counter-terrorism programme in 2023. I have figures fewer in 2019, so you can see how mission creep has taken over here. The figures here, it says, include 297 children under 10, and the figures I quoted before were from a few years before. An Open Rights Group report highlighted some of the real-life harms of data sharing under Prevent for Children, including a child having their school place withdrawn. In addition, a Prevent referral is shared with Children's Services, and this information is kept for 25 years after the child's 18th birthday. It would therefore still be available when that child is an adult and has children of their own. I hate this there. That's a plural. You can use it when you're talking about children. That's a grammatical possibility. I don't see anything wrong with saying it here. It would therefore still be available when that child is an adult and has children of its own, thus impacting any future assessment concerning their own children and any children's service interventions. You can see how this is going to wreck a kid's life. So, if a child is reported for having extremist views and the age of that child is still in single figures... Oh, by the way, while I'm thinking about the subject, you know about the online safety stuff, and this is all supposed to be about safety for children. Well, harms for children by legislation in this government. So, does the government really care about children? Well, you could make up your own mind about that. But anyway, if a child is reported to Prevent for having extremist views and that child's is still in single figures age-wise, who's doing the reporting? The child's parents? Well, I doubt it, of course. No. With perhaps a couple of exceptions, perhaps malicious neighbours or something, I'm guessing that any such report would have come from the children's teachers. The teachers. The responsible adults to whom the parents have entrusted the welfare and education of their infant offspring. Now, although not that many kids have been siphoned off in this way, word does get round, doesn't it? How much confidence would parents have in their children's educators, or indeed in the school system generally, when they become aware that teachers have become agents of the state? Now, look, I'm quite sure some people will argue with me here, but I feel I can see a pattern emerging. It's a pattern in which teachers are enforcing a political orthodoxy that has nothing to do with teaching children anything and a lot to do with towing the party line, accepting a party doctrine and following a party groupthink. And they, not all remember, but a significant number, and they are so enthusiastically embracing this groupthink that they see no moral problem with reporting children to a government authority. Again, I suppose one or two of the nutters who occasionally poke into this channel will tell me I'm wrong, but I consider this to be a horrifying betrayal. It might be the duty of a teacher to guide a child who's saying things that it doesn't understand, but to report a child to government authorities for unacceptable opinions shows a complete lack of understanding either of children or of morals, and you start to wonder whether the people who do that should be in the teaching profession at all. And this reporting, of course, always assumes that teachers are intelligent and rational. Well, I've had a lot to do with teachers, and I can tell you that a lot of them aren't really that bright. I'm sorry to have to say this. And, of course, there are well-engaged and intelligent teachers. I'm not saying they're all a bunch of dunderheads, but there are quite a few who really don't have much up there. What would you say about a teacher who reports a 4-year-old who might have said, because he's 4 and not completely in control of his mouth, might have said cooker bomb instead of cucumber? Yeah, might have said, but a 4-year-old was reported to Prevent for what the teacher thought he'd said cooker bomb. And a 10-year-old who wrote about a terrorist house instead of a terraced house. She got, or he got referred to Prevent as well. You'd think the teachers would have exercised some common sense about those, wouldn't you? Well, you'd be wrong, because that's exactly what happened. When I started researching this, I came across that Home Office report, which tells us that between April 2018 and March 2019, 5,738 individuals were referred to Prevent, and that 87 were male, 58% under 20, and as I said, that's not surprising. And the highest proportion came from the education sector. And in my innocence, still with the idea of Muslim radicalisation in my mind, I thought, OK, there are many Muslims in the education sector. They go to school and college just like everyone else. And there'll be many teens who, as we know, are particularly vulnerable to seemingly romantic enterprises. And my immediate assumption was that this is what was accounting for the numbers of Prevent referrals. And then I read down here that the most common were cases referred because of concerns about right-wing radicalisation, 45%, followed by Islamist radicalisation, 37%. Now, if anyone here has seen even the smallest clip of the sort of sermons you get in a lot of mosques in this country, it's next to impossible that those figures stack up. And unfortunately, that's how it's staying, because as long as the Labour Party are in power with their obsessions with Islamophobia, that's how Prevent is going to concentrate their efforts. Although that's not where it's going to end, because the next question is, where did those kids get their subversive ideas from? People are, in Prevent, they're going to be asking this. We've got some white radical kids here. Where did they get their ideas from? And they're going to say, well, where else but their parents? The parents. So they're going to be next on the list. And that's where Prevent are going to extend their empire. OK, parents, be afraid. Be very afraid. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.